make sure that we record this for today. So welcome to our coffee chat for July 22nd. I know normally we do Tuesday. Today, Liz was available Wednesday, so I snagged her because I know her schedule is busy. So I definitely appreciate her coming today. And before I hit record, I did say this, but even if you're not watching this live, please use this recording when you feel you need to for the rest of the year, because the topic that I have Liz speaking on today is something that we're going to be navigating together for a long time. I feel like the climate of the worldly matters, as well as our business, as well as how social media is forever shifting. I went to who I call my guru on all these kind of things with critical thinking, handling conflict. Liz has taught me so much in that department. And it's really cool that we're also learning from Keith in the Diamond Dash right now, because I know that Keith, who is Liz's coach, taught a lot of things to her too, in terms of how do we lead in these kind of times? How do we still show up authentically and share our voice, share what we have to offer without feeling like we're ignoring what's really happening? And do we have to post? Should we post? And so I was voice messaging with Liz and I said, what do I title this? And she said, well, what do you think people need right now? And, you know, the cool thing that I will say about Beachbody and about this particular organization is that I know that even Liz and I, we have different beliefs, we have different values, and Liz and I will still love each other when we don't see eye to eye for the rest of time. And I think it's such a beautiful gift when you realize that you don't immediately have to just cut someone out of your life or go after them and attack them just because they have a different view or a different standpoint. There's a way that we can have a sense of unity, and that's what's really special about Beachbody. It's taught me so much about, you know, when we have some conflicts with coaches or customers or different viewpoints on how to do this business, I've learned from Liz how to come at things with a, let's take a step back, let's take a breath, let's sleep on it, and come back with a response that just has that little extra oomph of class to it. And I love it. So I look up to Liz a lot in that way. So I asked her to come today because when I was camping and I had a little bit of service, anytime Liz posts, I always watch her stories. And she was posting about how she's coming at these worldly matters and how she's handling her own personal life and still going about business while using her platforms. And I was like, my team needs to hear this. So can I please book you on a call? Because it feels like we're walking on eggshells sometimes. So Liz, I feel like I don't need to introduce you, but Liz is my coach. We have been friends for a long time. She's been a coach for 8+ years, I think, and I'm 7 years. So we've seen the ebbs and flows of what seems to feel like everything. And there's always new waves of excitement. So I feel like this is perfect timing, mid-2020 with everything happening. So Liz, I'm just going to turn it over to you.
Awesome. Thanks, Carl. And I share all those sentiments that you just said, so much so. And I love seeing how you are, I don't know, like you're doing that with your team and your people. And just the fact that this topic is important to you and important to like disseminate into your team is just evidence of that leadership and focusing on the right things. And I'm going to ask you guys, if you don't mind, if this can, I want it to be interactive a little bit, just so that one, I'm not a talking head the whole time, but two, I know what you guys are struggling with more so if you're telling me or if you share your thoughts on stuff. So knowing the topic at hand, knowing that we're kind of going to address like how to successfully be a positive voice, learn how to be an adult and disagree, how to be a critical thinker, all those different things, how to share on social in a time that truly is one of the, I think, most divisive times in our nation's history, like where people are so truly divided. All knowing that that's kind of like what we're fleshing out today, do me a favor, and if you have a specific question or a specific scenario, drop it in the chat so that I can like bring it up to the group and we can talk through it. But I think for me, I was saying to my husband Michael the other day, man, I feel like for the first time in my life, like I'm an actual adult, because for the first time in my life, I've gotten to a place where I'm like, wow, we really, like, there are a lot of opinions in the world. There are a lot of people firmly planted in what they believe to be true, whether it's righteously or, you know, in a way that I don't believe to be the right thing. Yet we can coexist. And there has to come a time in your own life experience beyond just Beachbody where you realize that there are going to be the core people in your life, that the ones that are truly deserving of your love and support and attention, that you have to learn how to love them for where they're at and not try and convince or change them. And then they're going to be the fray people, kind of like the people that are more acquaintances or people in your life, but they're not necessarily your core group of people that you trust or depend on or lean on, that are going to have their opinions, and it really shouldn't affect you. And then there are going to be, you know, being a coach and being online and being more visible, all the people outside of that fray who don't, like, their opinion truly does not and should not affect you. And the way that I've been trying to approach everything, because we're being presented with so many different, not even in relation all to the same things, like so many different thoughts, opinions, stances, is, man, how can I shift from a place of like just absorbing all this content and all these opinions and all these thoughts, and start making a decision of what my value system is, what's important to me, what I want to stand for, and then learning how to critically think through it. Meaning, here's one of the biggest mistakes I'm seeing people make right now, is they're super reactive, right? In multiple different ways. One way of being super reactive is seeing a message come out into the world through whatever medium, right? Like it can be social media, it can be mainstream media, it can be, you know, your neighbor said it, like whatever, it's coming out and it's hitting you. And your immediate reaction is, oh, it sounds like something that I should be supporting or I should be standing behind, or I kind of get that. And you do no digging, no research, no learning, and you just like spew it back out into the world because you're like, this is what I'm supposed to think, this is what I'm supposed to say, and we're just putting it out there. So it's super reactive. Then you see people who are, you know, claiming to dig a little bit deeper on whatever topic is at hand, and they're not critically thinking, they're just finding more opinions or more thoughts to validate what they believe to be true. This is probably the most common thing that I see, is that people are like, well, okay, I believe this, or my political party stands for this, or my religion says this, or, you know, my like side of the spectrum of like liberal versus conservative says this. So I'm going to gather as much fodder and evidence as I can to support what I already believe. That's not critical thinking. That's a really immature, limited viewpoint on the world way of thinking. And then after they collect all this evidence, they go spew all that evidence out into the world, and it becomes, well, see, I like this news station said this, and then this social media person I follow said this, and then this came in from the government, so it must be this. And it's all it is really doing is trying to quell and comfort ourselves in the fact that we all as human beings want to be validated in what we believe. No one wants anyone to be in their face saying, actually, you're wrong. Actually, there's a different perspective that you might want to consider, because people want to be validated. People want to be right. But then there's this elevated way of thinking. And you guys, if you know me, you know I'm obsessed with the study of leadership and elevation, and really stepping into a different level version of yourself that says, I'm willing to admit when I'm wrong. I'm willing to research outside of what is comfortable and common to me. I'm willing to seek out truth over seeking out what I've said I believe to be true. And I'm willing to be firmly planted in those values, but I'm also willing to share it and know that not everybody is going to agree with it. And it's not my job to get them to agree with it. The same way it is not our job to convince anyone to become a Beachbody coach. It is not our job to convince anyone to drink Shakeology or do our workout programs. It's our job to share value, right? Like to share what we believe to be of benefit, to share our stories, to share our truth, and hopefully inspire people to be a critical thinker enough to say, let me do my own research on this and figure out if this is the right thing for me, and I will go from there. And one of the biggest reasons I've felt like I've finally stepped into adulthood at almost 33 years old is that there are people I love deeply in my life that I disagree with fundamentally, and I still love them. There are people in my life that I'm seeing them say things and share things that I know in my heart of hearts is a really limited, lacking leadership perspective, but I'm not going to go on there and try and pull all of my defenses to try and prove them wrong, first of all, and most importantly, publicly, which is what social media has become, like a cesspool of people just arguing about bullshit, which is driving me insane. And also trying to belittle what they're saying, even though if I know based in like whatever research I did that it's not true. Okay. So there are people within our organization, within our team that stand on one side of the fence when it comes to COVID and stand on the other side of the fence when it comes to COVID. There are people that stand on one side of the fence when it comes to Black Lives Matter. There are people that stand on the other side of the fence when it comes to Black Lives Matter. But here's one of the most important pieces that my husband has been saying from day one is if people could just wake up and realize at the core that we all want the same thing. Nobody wants COVID to be a problem, whether they believe that masks are helpful and staying at home and shutting down the economy is smart, or whether they believe it's a bunch of bullshit that's being, like pushed in because of a political agenda. No, we all want people to be healthy, and we want the world to continue, and we don't want people losing their jobs, and like we all want the same thing. Black Lives Matter, aside from a couple of crazies that I've personally never encountered, nobody is saying, I want less equality. I think Black people deserve less rights. Like, obviously, if people are saying that, we're not even paying attention to them because they're so out there that like they're not even worth an ounce of our energy. But everyone's saying, I want equality too. But there are some people saying, I just don't think this is how we're going to get it. I think this is creating more division. And then there are some people saying, I think we need more division to get more equality, right? So if you can get to the place where we're actually looking at the core of, like, there are people that I've been having conversations with in my life that we really do, like, we don't agree with the approach of how we're getting to it. But if we can have a conversation close that conversation with, you know what, I don't think we're going to see eye to eye on how we all plan to get there. But I just want to let you know, if this is true, I don't say this to everybody. If it's not true, then I don't say it. But if it's true, I just want you to know I still love you. I'm really grateful that we could have a respectful conversation about this, even though we would do it really differently. And I've said this to multiple friends and multiple family members. If I become a thorn in your side by sharing my truth on social media, truly to preserve the friendship, please feel free to unfollow me, because I'm not going to change what I believe to be true just because I made you uncomfortable, or that's not going to happen. But I can give you my blessing to unfollow me, and I will take zero offense to it, because we shouldn't like constantly be slapped in the face by allowing ourselves to continually absorb the opinions of other people that we don't agree with. It's not healthy, right? Like, this is just being magnified because social media is what it is. 15, 20 years ago, it was a lot easier to coexist with people that you didn't agree with, because you just wouldn't bring up politics at the barbecue, right? When you were talking, you just wouldn't, you knew, like, when you were around certain aunts and uncles, you just wouldn't talk about that particular thing because you wanted to enjoy the time that you were with them. And you knew that those weren't your people to discuss and flesh out these particular conversations. At the same time, I also grew up in a family with people, had different opinions on stuff, but they could have these conversations with a level of respect that even though, like, as a bunch of Italians, our voices would be raised in that particular conversation around the kitchen table, it would still always end with love. And there was never like name calling. There was never belittling. There was never shaming. It was just like, man, we really disagree on this one. What's for dessert? Like, you could get to that place because people had that sense of respect and love for the other person to a point where it can still be talked about. So my best pieces of advice is stop trying to convince people of something that, that's not your job. It's just not your job. Stop shaming people for what they are choosing to talk about or choosing not to talk about. That's also not your job. Social media, just for the record, is not all of life, right? Like, I had someone from my old email list, I don't even use this email list anymore, who's not on my current one that has updated stuff, complaining to me that she didn't like how I didn't quickly enough talk about a particular topic on that old email address. And it was like, that's because I don't check that freaking email. Like, you don't, like, this isn't representative of me as a human being. The same way my Instagram isn't every piece of who I am. I am very selective about what I put on there, and you're going to get what I want you to get. Right. So don't like judge how people are approach something. Don't try and convince them. And here's my best piece of advice, something that I've been stepping into more, a little, like, I would say the last couple of years, but really over the last 6 months to a year, like, intensely. And this one is a tricky one to kind of talk about. So learning to be a critical thinker. This is going to serve you in every aspect of your life, not just this particular conversation. So what does it mean to learn to be a critical thinker? It's like peeling back the layers of the onion. That's how I look at it. A lot of times people just see the onion and they see whatever's on the surface of the onion and they just talk about what's on the surface of the onion, but they never take the time to say, wait a minute, what happens if I were to, like, peel back the layers of this onion to figure out what the root cause of this situation really is? So I could go down like a 10-hour rabbit hole. I'll spare you. But basically, when something is presented at face value to you, let's say through mainstream media, if for a single second you don't question the narrative or realize the fact that there's an agenda behind everything that's being presented to you, and you're not asking why, or if something doesn't seem quite right, but you're just like, well, but my source told me this, there's a problem there. So critical thinking is taking you out of, like, whatever movement you're a part of, or whatever, political party you're affiliated with, or whatever you want to be seen as, and saying, how can I unearth truth when something doesn't quite look right? And what are the real facts that I can do my own diligence on to figure out, like, the root of this, versus saying, people seem to praise me when I say this, so I'm going to say this, right? But instead having your own independent thinking brain that can get to the root and be willing to speak truth, even if it comes at a cost. So, this is an example, right? So in the beginning, and you can have whatever opinion you want about this. In the beginning, when COVID happened, and I just kind of want to walk you through this timeline, right? So that you can understand what I mean by critical thinking. In the beginning, when COVID happened, we didn't know a lot about the virus. So my family's stance on it was, let's be cautious. So we bought N95 masks in case we were going to have to be flying home to my family. We were really, social distancing, paying attention, and as we were being presented with data, we were making decisions accordingly. Now, I started to notice about a month into it that this became really political, that, like, one side was saying this and one side was saying this. And something in my brain, like, that just didn't sit well with me. I'm like, if this is a disease, why is this based on, like, what political party you're a part of as to what you decide to be the right approach to this? So I decided to step back from anything that was being fed to me through either political party or any media whatsoever, and I started to unearth what was true. So for example, as we started seeing more what we felt like was reliable data, we started to say, wait a minute, the media is saying this. Even my media stations that I have always watched and rely on are saying this. But based on data and information, this isn't making sense. So let me question the narrative until I can get to a place where I can wrap my brain around about what I believe to be true, even if it isn't in alignment with this party, right? With this group. And in doing that, I've gotten a lot of pushback. But when you can get to the inside of the onion, now all of a sudden you're not becoming a parrot. You're not like, oh, like when I post this, a bunch of people clap for me. Or when I post this, like I can shame someone else because they're not handling it this way. And I can say, I can make actual decisions for me and my family based on fact versus agendas and opinions, right? So we started to change how we were handling and doing things within our family based on how data was coming out and how we were learning about it, not from sources that were unreliable, but from going to places like, the Florida Health Department and actually going to their health records and spending an hour like looking into when I saw a report saying something wasn't like there were 100% positive rates at these labs, like that didn't sound right in my brain. So then I wanted to find out what was going on. So my point is, whether it's COVID, whether it's Black Lives Matter, whether it's health, whether it's this, whether it's that, not your job to convince anybody. Do your own digging, use your brain, be an adult and learn how to have conversations and learn how to use the phrase, I really respect you. I'm really glad we could have had we had this conversation respectfully, but I don't want to keep talking this to death because I know that like, I'm not going to convince you of anything and that's not my goal. And you're not going to convince me of anything. That's not my goal. If it preserves the relationship or enhances the relationship, let's for now just like stop looking at each other's stuff and have a relationship outside of this conversation. And I've had to do that with a lot of different people that I really care about. I want to take a second and go into the comments and make sure I haven't missed any questions. Colleen, did you see any questions specifically?
Questions. Everyone's loving it, and this is just so perfect. I kind of just wanted to also chime in with my experience because I mean it's been like an interesting, I don't know, how long do we say, 6 months now? Like, I don't know, maybe 4 or 5
Close to it, yeah.
And I had a very jolting personal experience that I think is important for me to share, especially for the coaches who are out there sharing every day and having people comment back on things. And I want to share with you, Liz taught me this. I mean, she didn't like sit me down and say, this is how you answer a jerk in your inbox kind of thing. But I just, over the years, these are some things that I've compiled from her example. So I went camping in Shasta. And it was the like right during George Floyd's death. I had like no service. I came home and we hear about riots, and I was clueless because I don't watch the mass media because of that inaccuracy. It doesn't describe the events how I wish to dissect them, and so I typically stay away from it. But obviously, I was seeing it everywhere, and so I made a post, and I got my first message from what I would call a BFF. Like, we raise our kids together. And it was just this novel in my inbox of her telling me how much she loved me, but she was doing this for me. And she bullet pointed for me my white privilege and what I was doing wrong and all this. And it was jolting to me at first because I was like, whoa, I wasn't expecting it from her. But at the same time, I think it was such a beautiful thing that she had the courage to share a semi-realistic, tough conversation. The parts of it I didn't agree with it, and parts of it I entertained. And so rather than me being like what I really wanted to say, I took a step back. My heart was beating, my hands were shaking. I reread it and I just asked, how would my highest self, and again, you don't have to ever answer. You can easily delete, block, move on, your choice. But this is a friend. This is someone that I was just, like, I can't just open this message and leave it here. It'd eat me alive. I felt like I had to say something. And so I asked, how would my best, highest self respond back to this? And the biggest message I want to share with you is I've learned empathy in the last year of my life more than ever. being able to empathize with other mothers in difficult situations, being able to empathize with someone who's being fed XYZ information, being able to empathize with people who are experiencing serious, injustices being a Black person. Like, I've just been able to look at the situation, and rather than being, I don't like the word immature, but part of me has been immature on social media because I'm mad and I'm reactive and I don't like what they say in my inbox. I've had to learn to grow through that and remember that I don't know what this person is experiencing today. I don't know what they know. I don't know what they've been fed. I don't know if they're mad at me, if they love me, hate me, but I have to empathize with what they're saying. And it was such a difficult conversation back and forth. And her husband even came on my Instagram and wrote a novel and attacked me. I didn't agree with what he said, but I just, again, same thing, empathized with the message he was trying to get across. And rather than getting nasty and just ruining my day, I was able to really challenge myself to take a step back and ask myself, how would my highest self, who isn't pissed off right now, who isn't taking it personal, how would I answer? And so if you guys, do share about difficult things on social media, know that that might be a tool in the tool belt that will help you along the way. Because, I've gotten messages sometimes from coaches where I'm like, what the hell is this person thinking of sending this message to me? And I have to ask myself, how would Liz answer this message? Or how would Keith Callahan answer this message? Because I look up to them a lot. And so I've been able to kind of, what Liz was saying is step back, critically think in a different kind of way, and just, I don't know, if I was to answer how I wanted to answer, I would have gone to bed really upset with myself. So just wanted to share that little bit.
I agree with that so much, Colleen, because it's a really tough thing to do, because people are, okay, so much of, yes, opinion is formed based on like where we get our information from, like media and stuff. And I could do an entire like preaching session on how corrupt all media, I'm not talking about like just liberal, just conservative, like do your digging on that and go down that rabbit hole and realize like the agenda that's behind it in your head will spin. But I'm trying to find right now a post that I had saved that I loved, of how someone responded to this kind of stuff. And I don't know if you guys follow Awaken with JP. He's hysterical. He's a comedian that puts stuff out on social. If you go to my stories, you'll see I shared it, but he talks about how to like respond to haters, and it's really funny. But I wanted to find this response because it was too good. Give me a second. I must have saved it. Oh, someone commented on, I don't know if you guys know who Mike Rowe is, but someone commented on his page saying, if you're involved with PragerU, I've lost all respect for you. And his response, because that's a conservative, more conservative viewpoint, Mike Rowe's response was, the part that fascinates me, Jennifer, is the part where you assume your respect is something I might be craving. What happened exactly to give you the impression that people you've never met might care about having your respect? Now, although I don't recommend responding like that, that's the sentiment of what this is. It's like, why are we sitting here craving everyone's validation and respect and support instead of learning how to go inward and be more ourselves and know what we stand for and know what we represent, and make sure that what we stand for and what we represent is what we stand for and what we represent, not what we've been fed on repeat for so long. And it's a tricky thing too, because yes, we're being fed stuff, but at the same time, I struggle too, because so much of what we believe to be true is based in our own personal experiences. So I was having a really good conversation with someone I deeply respect about the whole concept of masks. And even though data is coming out showing the lack of validity in how they work, she was saying, sharing about how one of her parents had cancer and has a suppressed immune system and all these things. And that's, to Colleen's point, you just have to have compassion, because even though I might not agree with what she thinks the approach should be, all of her emotion and her thought around it is wrapped up in her personal experience of fear for her parent, right? So even though like technically speaking, when someone has cancer and they go through chemo and their immune system is really compromised, right? They don't go back to their neighborhood and that entire neighborhood starts wearing masks. Although that's a nice sentiment that the world would change for that one person, that's just not really reality. But to that girl, her mother is her world. So in her mind, it's like, yes, this is what I would want to happen. And that's why I'm for this. I'm not for this because it's rooted in data. I'm not for this because it's rooted in science. I'm for this because this is what my heart is telling me I need to be for because of my own personal experience. So Colleen brought this up too. It's like, you can't argue with people's personal experience. And it's not your job to try and change their mind. Even if you fundamentally disagree what they believe to be true and that their personal experience is actually becoming a cloud of judgment, it doesn't matter. Be a compassionate person. Stop trying to, argue with people and convince people of stuff. And the other thing I would say too is make sure you aren't just being a parrot. Like, make sure you're not just sharing things because the world kind of told you should share something, and you're speaking to something that you're truly convicted in, that you're willing to go to bat for because it's a piece of like what you so deeply believe. Like, there are a couple of, I believe a lot of things. I don't talk about all those things on social media. There are like 2 or 3 things though, that if you got in my face about it, I would like talk about it to the death, because I don't care what you think about me. I care more about the mission behind what this particular topic is about. So you can have those things that you're deeply convicted in and that you've done your research on and that you haven't just been fed an agenda and you actually believe this because of whatever. But don't feel like you have to like flavor of the day. Oh, people are talking about race, got to talk about race. Oh, people are talking about masks, got to talk about masks. People are talking about this, got to talk about that. Like, that's just adding to the noise. That's just being obnoxious. Like, if you're deeply rooted in things, that likely means you're going to be sharing more valuable content because you have done your research and you're not just sharing the surface level BS that everybody else is sharing so that you're just becoming a part of, like, people do that because they want to feel important. They want to feel like they're a part of something bigger than them, but really they're just an annoying little voice that's like chirping in everybody's ear, adding to the noise. But if it's something that really represents your value systems and who you are and like what you want to, like the hill that you want to die on, great. Make that a part of your platform, but don't let it take over everything. I'm not saying that you have to be like this PC, don't offend anyone, only talk about health and fitness. That's not what I'm saying at all. But I'm saying you don't have to talk about everything just because that's what everybody else is doing. Do what's true to you and what represents who you are.
It's like a perfect segue to another piece I wanted to share with you guys about being true to who you are. Because when my friend had messaged me and said, basically what she said was that she didn't think it was okay and she thought it was insensitive that I was talking about the worldly events, but sprinkling in my health and fitness and the fact that my son was going to a new school, because that showed my white privilege. She didn't think that I was being sensitive to the matters. And what's crazy is I had to tell her, I had to stay authentic and true to myself. I said, I'm sorry that it, comes off as insensitive to you. I genuinely am, but I want you to know that the reality is over here in my life, I can only share truly what's happening in my day. My son is going to school today. I am working out today. I am eating healthy today. I am on a team call today. I am inviting people to my challenge group today, as well as also learning about what's happening out there today. I said, if I only chose to make it look pretty because I'm supposed to be XYZ person example on social media, I'd be lying to you. And my goal is to be authentic to you, that I'm learning and growing through this process. And so I had to be, I guess what I'm saying is, be okay with, if you want to speak up for yourself, like, be okay with being you. If you want to only share it, it's cool. That's your values. That's what you want to do. Own it. I've always been, please own who you want to be and claim the goals that you want to go after. And I feel like in my life, with everything happening, with every movement that Liz has addressed, I have the example of everything in my life. I don't know if you guys watch Summit, but Mike Mulally, if that's how you say his name, got the CEO award, I believe, because he was in the trenches, on the front line, helping these, like high risk COVID patients, like intense in parking lots, posting photos of this is how serious this shit is. And then there's like my life over here in the mountains where people are like, no, this isn't serious. And so I feel like I had so many different areas, and I just feel like anything is possible on the spectrum. The exact example that Liz gave of, the woman whose mother had just gone through chemo and, compromised, like that was that woman's reality. If you can think of it in today's world, I feel like it exists. And so being compassionate for all the different situations and scenarios has also been something. My husband's been through chemo 5 years ago, so I can only imagine if this would happen, I wouldn't be able to be there in the room with him during chemo. So it's crazy how much I've been able to empathize on all areas of the spectrum with everything going on. So, but just, ask yourself, who do I want to be in this situation? What values do I have? And it's okay if someone doesn't agree with you, but I mean, I'm not going to sit there and banter with people, but being true to yourself by not feeling like you're being controlled by someone because they didn't like how you shared today. Like I refused to stand down to that, because she didn't like how I shared, and I had to be okay with that. And it took me a couple weeks because it was a good friend of mine, but it was hard to swallow at first. I mean, I was just like, what just happened? So at the end of the day.
Yeah, and we open ourselves up to opinions when we put stuff out on social media. So part of life is also developing like enough of a thicker skin to not take everything personally. Sometimes it's not really representative of us as much as it's representative of what that person's going through, so it's just, it's tough. And like, know what you're supporting too, right? Like that's coming back to that parrot idea. Like I see people just sharing stuff, but not actually reading the article, or like sharing a clip of what a politician said, but not actually listening to the whole speech, right? Like that's perpetuating the problem. That's perpetuating the lies, is when we share like the clips, or when we just share the post and we don't do the digging, or we support the group, but we don't know what it's really representing or who's funding it. Like these are big things. I 100% stand behind the sentiment that Black Lives Matter, specifically Black Lives Matter. I stand behind that sentiment. I will not support the group. I will not support the group because through media, the group looks all well and good. If you peel back the layers of the onion, it's being funded by the devil himself. If you look into George Soros and where the money's coming from, the money is not going to Black lives, which is what I stand for. The money is going to the Democratic political party. And they, even the NAACP, when you dig enough versus just looking at the surface, yeah, I support Black Lives Matter, this like great group. When you look at, when you do your digging and you see the fact that it's run by an American terrorist, a woman who was released out of jail on Clinton's last day in office. This is all stuff that's not going to be told to you. So before you start sharing like blindly, like, yeah, I support that. That sounds like a good cause. It sounds like a good thing. How can you support the concept and stand behind it instead of supporting the fact that Black lives are being used and abused through this particular group? How can you like, if you support Black Lives Matter, you're actually not supporting Black lives, because that's not what this group is about in the radical divisions of it. There are certainly people who are doing good work through different branches of the organization, but that's where it comes down to like, be a critical thinker, ask questions. If something doesn't seem quite right, like something didn't sit well with me when I saw that truckloads of bricks were being dropped off within 20 minutes of George Floyd's death. Something doesn't sit right with me there. Or when you're seeing that they're taking down statues of abolitionists, of people who freed the slaves. Like, I can understand why they want to take down the statues of people who perpetuated slavery, but why? So when things don't line up, and you can disagree with me, that's fine, as long as you do your digging and you come to like true conclusions and not just what the mass media is feeding you. But my point is, with everything, not just this, everything, be a critical thinker. If something doesn't sit right, If something's not quite making sense, ask questions, do research, find sources that give the truth, and then you can find out what that truth is and stand behind it completely without being one of many people who's just parroting what they're hearing and ultimately not supporting the cause that they really want to support.
I think the concept that I just thought of is digesting it, peeling back the layers of the onion rather than consuming it. And we do that a
Totally.
lot on social media accidentally. We don't realize it. So just kind of have to check myself sometimes too. We have an awesome new coach on our team, Allie, and she lives in Portland. She has a question. It's hard for me to focus on literally anything else than what's going on in the streets every night. I really struggle posting anything else right now. I feel like whatever I have to say about fitness right now is so petty compared to what is happening. So I haven't posted anything. I just signed up as a coach too, so it's all new to me. But to speak my truth, I've always struggled. I know Beachbody isn't cheap, so I feel like at a time when I'm trying to fight for underprivileged people, how do I reconcile that? Any tips?
That's such a good question, Allie, and I know you're not alone in sharing that. It's not even specific just to Beachbody coaches. It's anybody like with a platform online. But I think that's where having a deep conviction in why you're a coach is so important, because your mission has to be bigger than slinging challenge packs or running challenge groups. It has to be like, what value do you see in having this platform of how you can affect positive change in the world? So if you know that there are many injustices going on in the world, and by the way, these things have been going on for generations. It's just how things are being highlighted right now. So you're never going to escape a world where there's chaos and there's stuff going on, and depending on who wants to highlight what will depend on, what we're being shown and what's being focused on. But it doesn't mean that your mission loses its value, because the same way there are injustices that are being focused on right now, and there's a death toll ticker telling us how many people are dying of COVID. Do you know how many people are dying of heart disease? Do you know how many people are dying of obesity related diseases? Do you know how many people are dying of heart attacks? So those are all things that we are blessed enough to affect change in. Yeah, we're getting told how the unemployment rate is a problem, but we have a solution for that. We can support people when they don't have like financial wellness. We have solutions to problems that might not be the focal point of the media. Doesn't mean they're not real, and doesn't mean that we don't have an incredible platform to serve people at a higher level. So what I would say is, like, get yourself really rooted and convicted in that. Like, know what it is about Beachbody and why you're here as a coach, and stand behind that. And it's not that it has to take over the conversation, but people need this. There are people that are at home crippled with anxiety who would be able to live a more fulfilling life if they just were able to do a workout and fuel their body with something healthy, because they're sitting there waiting for the world to tell them what they can do next instead of actually taking back control of their lives. You could be that person to introduce them to something that changes their lives. And I see another question from you. Do you know if there's anything out there where people are fundraising or supporting women who can afford? I can't afford the BOD membership, like scholarship. I don't know if anybody else does. I actually don't think there's probably some red tape around that too. I think the big thing is, yes, there are people who genuinely can't afford $99 in a year. So I'm certainly not a math person, but if you broke down the monthly cost or daily cost of Beachbody On Demand, there's a very small population of people like that couldn't truly, like, money doesn't exist, couldn't afford this. They might not be prioritizing their health and not feeling like they can put that money and invest it back into themselves. But it's a very low cost for what they're getting, especially for the return on investment, for how much their life could change if they were able to invest back into themselves. So some of that, I believe, is mindset. For you, knowing the value of the programs, I know you're probably talking about more like people that are like deeply struggling. I don't think we have a scholarship program for something like that, but I'm talking about more like people who, are struggling financially, but they're also struggling financially because they're probably not setting their priorities too well too. Oh,
I'll
and
comment on
Janelle
that.
spoke
I was
to
just
that
going
too.
to add, to answer the question, I mean, I don't personally know exactly. The red tape is tricky in terms of like doing the fundraiser versus free bot and things like that. But I mean, I don't know how familiar you are with following the things that Carl does do for communities in need, and how we have been a part of what's been going on. It's been such a beautiful thing to watch. So just adding that little highlight for Carl, because I'm super proud of the work that he does. But the other piece I was going to say is, now that you're a new coach, something that's going to help you build your confidence, your credibility, and you're a servant at heart, Ellie. You're a teacher. I mean, I've been watching you for a long time in our virtual wellness studio, and we've connected here and there. But I feel like I know you, and I don't even know you, because I know you wear your heart on your sleeve. This is where you can create your own community, like we've created the virtual wellness studio. And there are a lot of free workouts that Beachbody gives out. And really, I think what you want to do is you want to give people the experience that you've had. Maybe they won't get the full catalog. Maybe they'll be able to afford it at some point, someday. Maybe you can come up with some type of fundraiser. But I do know that I think what could help you in this instance is creating a community where they can try the free workouts. And it's really about you just pouring your heart and love into setting the example of health and wellness for them. I feel like that would you would excel in a big way with that. So that's something that a lot of coaches actually build their business off these free communities, because they're giving and serving, and that builds their confidence as well. So, side note. You're welcome. And I know you're new to the team page too, and we actually have a lot of new faces on here today. I don't think I've updated it with the 10 rounds workout or the MBF sample workout. So now we actually we have 12 free workouts, and Beachbody unlocked every kids workout on their Vimeo channel as well when COVID hit. So we have I think 20 plus free kids workouts for families to do at home together with their kids, or have PE class in the living room. But we also have a free PDF that I feel like is just the biggest blessing and gift to be able to hand out. Was there any other questions? Maybe. Oh, Janelle already typed that, what I just said as I was blabbing. I didn't see Janelle typed it. Wow. Liz, we appreciate your time, your expertise. It's been a tricky time to navigate. And I know that I think the best thing, like I said, rather than consuming everything that's happening and letting it just sit like an elephant on our chest, I feel like we can digest better. We can always do better in terms of digesting and making a decision of how we're going to delegate our time. For me, I use my Brendan Burchard planner, and I really believe that my time is my boss. And I could spend all the time in the world just digesting and processing what's happening, but I do know and believe and always have that taking care of myself will allow me to do more in the end. I don't want to be burnt out. I don't want to go to bed at the end of the night feeling so depressed, so down, so depleted that I can't wake up and make a difference in the world the next day. And so I think that it's okay and necessary to set healthy boundaries for yourself. Mental health is a huge thing right now, and just that's why I bleed blue, because everything we do is about becoming our best self. It's not just the workout or just muscle burns fat. It's just this really big vision that we're able to create for people and how to help people. So thanks again.
Can you hear me?
Oh,
Can I
yeah.
say something real fast? So I was just curious before we get off here, what would you say to someone? I had a few coaches who were coming to me and they were like, wow, I see my following going down because of X, Y, and Z in this time, and people thinking I'm not handling something the way that they would. And a few people were just really discouraged by that. And I get it. And I kind of told them, maybe this is just, clearing the space for, new people. But what would you say to coaches that are feeling discouraged in, because it's, I think maybe all of us have maybe experienced it, maybe not. But I know I personally did. So I'm just curious your perspective on that and how you would kind of respond to someone who's feeling that way.
Yeah, I think that's a great question, Candace. And the things that come to mind for me are, one, I always like to say, is there a lesson in this? So sometimes we get criticism, and although it didn't come from the sources that we would necessarily trust, people that aren't really our innermost people, is there any truth in what they said? And that's a that is a tough thing to discern sometimes, because you don't want to personally absorb everything everybody says, especially if it's coming from someone from like a really negative place. However, sometimes someone might say something, and if you read it and you can look at it from an objective perspective, you're like, man, there's a little bit of truth in that. Like, what could I have done better as a leader for next time? Not like, how could I have conformed to what they wanted me to do, but how, like, is there a way that I could have handled this better? And if you come to the conclusion that the answer is no, like, bless and release the shit out of these people that are leaving. Like, I've lost followers, but I've also gained a bunch more since I've been more vocal about this stuff. And like, I know we put so much weight on social media. I know it's how we build our businesses, but man, it is not representative of everything. And following and all that's like, it could go away tomorrow. If you put all your heart and eggs in that one basket, you're going to be sorely disappointed that your life can change based on an algorithm, you know, based on a hashtag. So I would say learn how to detach a little bit more emotionally from social media. And also, like, for the people that aren't speaking up on certain things, that's fine. But is your social media truly representative of you and your values, or is it like you saying things to get traction? Is it you kind of talking about surface level stuff? Because you can't be all that disappointed when people come and go with like the wind if you're not really building roots. Like, if you're not willing to talk about the things that are true to you that might push some people away, and you're playing it safe by keeping it more like happy surface level, then you can't be surprised when they easy come, easy go, you know, like, right? So like, I don't know, I'd rather talk about the things that I'm convicted in and lose some people over it and have like the people who really are grounded with me, than to have like a ton of people who like kind of don't really care about me all that much anyway.
You kind of touched on it there, Liz, but someone had asked, do we have to touch on and speak about anything going on?
No. Yeah, I mean, you don't have to do anything. You can do whatever you want. But I guess if you see an injustice that really speaks to you and you feel compelled to speak about it, speak about it. If it doesn't speak to you, then why would you speak about it? Right? You know, like, so that's what I'm seeing. A lot of people like sharing stuff and speaking on stuff that they really don't care that much about or don't know that much about, but they just feel like they're supposed to. So I'm certainly not for like talking about something just for the sake of talking about it. But if it is like, if there are things in your, and I'm not even talking about specific to things that are going on right now or being highlighted right now. There's so many things in the world. Like, if you think it's an absolute injustice how our school system is run, great, talk about it. If you think that it's absolutely crazy that people can still buy cigarettes in this country despite the fact that it's killing people every single day in droves, awesome. Be a voice for the people who don't have a voice in that category. Like, you find your things. It's not that your social media has to become this social justice platform, especially if that's not true to you. But if it means a lot to you and you want it to be something that you talk about, great, talk about it. Know that you'll lose some people and you'll gain some people. And if you'd rather keep stuff surface level, do it. Just know that easy come, easy go. Like, you can't expect people to be lifers with you when you're not really talking about anything all that life-changing.
I think one of the beautiful things about Instagram stories right now is also being able to use your voice to also say how you feel about things. And recently I was able to kind of put my words together and articulate how I feel about, you know, figuring out my path through, do I share? Do I not share? Do I get obsessed? Do I hide in the dark? You know, like, I have been able to talk to my Instagram stories and bring my followers and my viewers with me along, because maybe they're feeling the same. And I am so finally at the point where I'm okay if I say something that someone didn't like how I said it, or they don't agree. Like, I'm okay and I expect it, like we've already talked about. But I think maybe something that can help you guys is talking through, if you want to. That helped me a ton. And I also think it's good to write a caption as you talk, because we all know people are clicking. So you can get your points across by writing a little caption of just, like, you know, how you are feeling about it. And maybe it's selfish for me to kind of get it off my chest and share how I feel, but I've also been able to connect and people see the authenticity that I am kind of struggling with it, but I also want them to know I'm gonna be authentic about it. Like, you might not see me post about it every single day. That doesn't mean that I'm not thinking about it or learning about it. And I don't know, I'm just trying to fill people in because I feel like Instagram stories can be a conversation with people without actually being in conversation. So, Jana, you're brand new, girl. You're on like what day? I don't know. Like not even like 3 weeks, I don't think. So we will definitely work together on all of it.
I think it's 8 days.
8 days. Okay.
Yeah.
Not even 3 weeks. Amazing. I just last night, it was super late, so you might not have seen it. I shared how ironic. It was day 8 on my picture of T25 from when I signed up with Liz 7 years ago. And it was the worst picture. And I had like a bunch of fonts on it. And so you might suck at first, but we just show up, we work through it, we grow through it. And then you'll get to laugh and look back 7 years later, like the laugh we had last night. Okay, awesome. Perfect timing. This was great, guys. I really hope this helped you guys. I hope it gives you permission to go do the things that you've been bantering back and forth in your mind with, do I say it? Do I not say it? Do I show up? Do I not show up? I don't know how. I think it's this process of growth and failing forward. And you might do it wrong and being okay and saying, hey, I did this wrong. And rerouting, forever reinventing the way that we do things. So Liz, we appreciate your time. I know you're really busy. Threw this at you last minute, so thank you again. Helped me a lot too.
My pleasure. Thanks, guys.
Have a good day, everyone.
Thank you so much. That was really awesome.
You're welcome.